Is it easier to date outside of the American culture? Hi there, men's dating coach Harry Wilmington here, founder of introvertdatingsuccess.com. And on today's show, we're going to be answering a comment that was left on one of my previous YouTube videos from a guy that was asking about whether or not A, if I had any experience dating women outside of my culture, and B, if I found that it was easier to date women outside of the American culture versus the ones that are more Americanized. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to subscribe and click the little bell icon to be notified of when I post up new daily content. Also, be sure to go to the website to download my free ebook, Texting Like a Boss, as well as clicking on the tip jar tab to show your support for the show, the link of which can be found at the website as well as down below under this video. Let's get into it. So I'm starting to get a lot more comments now on the videos that I'm posting up on YouTube for this content. And if you're listening to the podcast, these shows can be found on YouTube by going to YouTube and typing in Harry Wilmington. My shows pop up all over the place. And so I did a previous show called Are Girls and Dating a Waste of Time? And so one of the comments that was left under there, I'm going to go over today. And what this guy said was, at a particular part of my video, he says, the guy whose question I was answering in that video had mentioned about possibly dating women and American women in Western society and stuff like that. So what this guy asked was, at this particular mark in the video, I think it's at 12:52 mark, he mentions American/Western society. Do you have experience dating outside of these cultures at all? Lots of American men say dating is far better, easier, and more natural in countries in Southeast Asia, for example. And no, not all of them are getting dates who are tricking them into landing them a green card. LOL, I'm just curious. And this is an argument that I've heard put forth time and time again, whereby people will say, oh, well, if you're an American and you go to these other countries, women are more submissive, they're more willing to cook and clean, and they're willing to do whatever you want them to do, and they don't fight back as much as American women do. Okay? And so I've heard this before, all right? And I kind of wanted to go over how some of those things function and why it is or is not necessarily a thing that will be true for you as an American trying to either date other women of other cultures in this country or date women of other cultures outside of this country, okay? So, but to answer the first part of the question is that, yes, I have actually been in a relationship before where the person I was dating was actually of Eritrean descent. So while she was born here, her parents were actually born overseas in Eritrea, which is on the border of Ethiopia. So basically like the very far east of Africa. And so, but she grew up here, but she grew up under that culture and under that community. And that community is actually very close knit here in the United States. Like they have them in East Coast in Washington, D.C. very heavily. And here in California, there are a lot of Eritrean people in particular areas of California that are grouped together where they have their whole family system. And with that comes a culture. Like they never got rid of their culture because they were able to come over from their country in like the 1900s and stuff and settle here and then, reach back to their previous country and have their relatives come over here. So they're a very, very tight-knit group, and they have their own culture, their own writing style, their own language called Tigrinya. They're it's a whole thing. So anyway, but yeah, the girl I dated I dated for like 5 or 6 years actually, was from that culture. And so I can tell you on my experience that between dating her versus other women I've dated, and I've dated Asian, I've dated Indian, I've dated, American, I've dated white women, I've dated black women. I can tell you amongst my dating experience that there are things that can be different here and there, but in terms of the bare basics of what women need and desire in order to be attracted to a man and to feel safe and secure, a lot of those things across cultural lines are pretty much the same. So I put together a few notes here that I wanted to go over. So the first note I put is that women in all cultures are typically about hypergamy. And that's basically where you try to find the best looking, or not best looking, but the best status mate based upon whatever that culture dictates would be a best status mate. So in some cultures, it might be the guy that's like the biggest because he's able to find resources of food. It might be someone that has like the best farmland or the best goats or has like the best clothes because it indicates he can buy stuff to look good and he can get the proper materials. But regardless of what that thing is, across cultures have their own thing that dictates what they determine to be a high status male. And most women around the world, these cultures are looking for those properties in their men to have to say that they're the best man to date. And universally across the board, that also equates to money. Like most women in most societies, regardless of what culture they're from, are not trying to actively chase after a broke man. Like they might find out later he's broke, but like usually they're seeing a guy thinking, oh, based on how he's dressed, based on how many goats he has, based on how big he is, that they're equating the look of this guy with he must be able to support me and be a stable force if I was in a relationship with him. Therefore, he must be of high status. Okay, so women are always in all cultures are looking for the hypergamy, the high status male that they feel is going to give them the best chance of having a family, of surviving, and also giving them some kind of social status. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and this is very, very important to get, okay, is that when people say, well, American men go across seas and find women that blah, 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 what these people are talking about is white guys. Like that is not to say that an American that is an African American or an American that is an Indian man or an American that is an Asian descent can't go over to other countries and get people. It's not saying that. But what I'm saying is when people say American men, they usually equate that with white men. And so yes, white men are typically valued higher in other cultures. And part of that's because of the whole manifest destiny where they went around and like, you know, robbed and pillaged and plundered countries to be able to rule them. So they look like the ruling class and they look like they have status and they look like they have money. And so, yeah, when these white men go over to these other countries, these, you know, Filipinos, Asians, Koreans, Chinese, Indians, Africans, etc., are going to look at them as if they are of high status. And that's partially due because they've done great propaganda. If you look at TV shows and movies, most of them show white men in good lights and that they have money. And these movies and TV shows get exported around the world for other cultures to see. So they already have a good vision of them. Whereas with other cultures, you know, especially, you know, in African-American culture, we get seen on TV as thugs and killers and rapists and baby daddies and etc. And those also get pushed out to the world and they get shown and they make an impression, and that impression is that we are not of as high a value. So it's going to be a lot harder for non-white American men to go around the globe and be able to just expect that women are going to see them as a highly qualified male. Most likely they're not going to. So I just want to dispel that because that's an important thing to put on this is that when you hear American, most people are equating that with white men. So that's the second thing. The third thing is the reason for this ease is because women are more willing to be submissive to men they feel are of higher value. So a woman that doesn't view you as high value is going to fight you tooth and nail about a wide variety of bullcrap. Like if she doesn't think you have money, doesn't think you have status, then yeah, she's going to nitpick over every single little thing. Whereas if a woman upon first looking at you assumes that you have a status, then she's going to be more likely to want to do things to be able to connect herself to you because she wants that status also, versus if she doesn't think you have that and she's going to fight you more. So yeah, again, it's going to be easier. And honestly, in most countries, the American dollar in particular typically goes a lot farther than in other countries. Like I know in the Philippines, you can live off $1,000 a month and look like a freaking king. So if you go to the Philippines and you got $1,000 a month that you can handle, yeah, you're going to look like a high status male. And therefore, more women are going to come to you because there are men in those countries that might not have that same status and might seem poorer to them. So by default, yeah, she's going to be willing to submit a lot easier to a guy that she thinks has money and status can get her out of her situation. And again, this guy said it's not always about having to get a green card, but still that sense of security, that sense of purpose, that sense of being able to think this guy is going to be able to support a family and have good kids and be able to raise them and not have to worry about them dying, that is a really big thing that women globally want from their man. Now, that said, if they end up finding out that their assumption was actually wrong, then that can actually turn them off from that mate. And that's with, again, women around the globe. So if she sees a guy, let's say she sees like an American white dude and thinks that he has high status, yeah, she's going to treat him like a king. But if she finds out, oh, wait, he really doesn't have a lot of money. Oh, he's really not supportive. Or what will happen sometimes is, you know, let's say the guy does fly them back over to this country and then she discovers that he's actually low man on the totem pole here, whereas he was high status there because by default, people in that country didn't have a lot of money. So he give the appearance of having more money, which in that country he did. But over here, he's low man on the totem pole. And now it's like, oh, wait, this isn't what I thought. Oh, I must change my mind. So that also happens sometimes too. So you got to be understanding that, again, it all goes back to hypergamy. You are presenting yourself a certain way, and so women view you as a certain way until that is proven incorrect. Once that's proven incorrect, then these same women can also lose attraction for you. And then lastly, in wanting to answer this guy's question, I made sure to do my research. I went on Yahoo and did a whole thing about, how women fall for and are attracted to men in other countries around the world. That's in your Asian countries, it's in your African countries, your Indian countries, your Russian countries, and globally, okay? Globally speaking, women in all these various countries typically want the same things. They want a man that's confident. They want a guy that looks like a leader. They want a guy that looks like he can make decisions. A guy that looks like he is about something, is going to be able to protect her and a possible future family. If you do not have these certain characteristics and traits, you can go anywhere on the globe, you're still going to end up suffering. Even if you have early success, because the women will think, oh, he must be high status as net, your insecurities are going to take over eventually. And then your inability to be able to take care of yourself, or possibly her, is going to take over. Your limited amount of funds is going to take over. Your self-doubt and depression about yourself is going to take over. And those things will turn off women globally. So what you want to do is really want to find out, okay, so how can you be the best version of yourself and be a confident version of that self, and be able to maybe put yourself in a position where you can at the very least support yourself so you do look good to any kind of prospect, whether they're in the Western society or abroad. Now, that said, I have not personally dated a woman outside of this country before, in terms of actually going out of the country to find people to date. So if that's been your experience, I would absolutely love to hear about it. Now that you've heard from me, I'd like to hear from you. Have you dated women outside of the US? And if so, what was your experience? If you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment down below or write to me at HarryWilmington@gmail.com. Are you ready to learn killer icebreakers that attract women on dating apps? Go to introvertdatingsuccess.com right now and check out my free video training, How to Get Attractive, Feminine, Emotionally Stable Women Dying to Respond to Your First Messages on Dating Apps Without Using Sleazy Pickup Lines, which will give you key secrets to sparking attraction and conversation with women online the smart way. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment on this video, and catch new episodes 7 days a week right here on YouTube or wherever podcasts can be found. In the meantime, be sure to check out other episodes right here so you too can learn how to date as your authentic introverted self while still getting your precious alone time. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.